got Katy Montgomerie joining us, who's a trans activist. This is all about the Mermaids and the LGB Alliance. Katy, do you want to explain what's happened here? Hi, by the way, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Hi,
How
thanks
are you
for
today?
having me.
You look very beautiful.
Thank you, and you. Yeah, glad to be here.
Going for
Hopefully
the
my
hoop
sound
earrings,
is a bit
always
better.
good.
Yeah. best type of earrings.
Yes.
Yeah, so basically there's a group called LGB Alliance, and the Charity Commission decided that they could be a charity, officially registered charity. And I personally think that's ridiculous, as does most of the LGBT community, because they're not like a charitable group. All they do is campaign against trans rights. And then another group, which is a trans rights charity, who do actually do charitable work and do actually help people, called Mermaids, tried to take them to court, or tried to basically initiate a court proceeding to get that charity status stripped from them. And there was a ruling by the judges which basically said Mermaids, it's a complicated legal thing.
Yeah.
They said Mermaids don't have legal standing, which basically means they didn't have a court case about it and they just threw it out before it got to the decision.
Now, somebody decided in the first place it was a charity, didn't they, Katy? So yeah. So why do you think that happened then? If they shouldn't have had that status, because I imagine that that's not an easy process.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that the sort of a process to approve someone of being a charity is quite relaxed. You know, there's not sort of lots of strict regulations, and also, you know, they themselves would claim that they are a charity, and they would say, we want to help gay people or whatever, so that's why you should give us charity status. But I think the main reason they did it is just for the extra sort of credibility it brings you.
You think to get credibility? See, that's what I'm wondering. What does it really matter? Does it really? Is it because of the work they do against? It
does matter for tax, yeah.
Yeah.
But it will mean that they'll have to publish all of their incoming and outgoings, which will be interesting, seeing where they get their funding from.
Oh yeah. I'm assuming you can have a look then.
It doesn't massively, like, on the grand scheme of things for trans rights, the fact that this case didn't go through, it didn't seriously upset me or anything. I mean, it's annoying. I think it's ridiculous that they are legally a charity. But I, you know, there are much more important things, like trans people in this country don't have proper access to healthcare and all this other kind of stuff. So.
Well, I do think, I do agree. I think that the Mermaids could use their efforts in another way and stop worrying about, it's the like worrying about everyone else kind of thing. You just do what you do and do it well. Do you not think?
I think, I mean, it does make sense to push back on this to some degree, because part of, like, the LGB Alliance's sort of strategy as an anti-trans campaign group is to present themselves as something they're not, which is a gay rights group. And they want to make this kind of imaginary conflict between gay and trans people.
So you think they're anti-trans? They wouldn't say that then, would they?
Katy, isn't there an argument to say, look, there's lots of charities that represent particular silos of people. There's things like Islamic Aid and Christian Aid and whatever, and one would assume that Muslims don't engage with Christian Aid and vice versa. I don't know, but I would assume that's the case. I just wonder whether it's right for Mermaids to think that just because this LGB Alliance doesn't appeal to trans people, that somehow that is damaging to the trans community in of itself.
Well, it's not. I mean, that's not really the issue that people have with them. I mean, the reason most LGBT people across the whole community don't like LGB Alliance is because they openly campaign against trans rights. So, I mean, for example, they've signed this public declaration called the WDI Declaration, saying they want to ban trans women like me, all trans women, you know, no exceptions, no rules at all, ban all trans women from all women's spaces. So that means I couldn't use the toilet at work and couldn't go to the gym anymore and all this kind of stuff. And also to, like, ban trans healthcare for under 18s and, like, to take away trans people's rights that I need to exist in this country.
But Katy, I mean, you know, it's not for me to dictate to people, but I think that it's worth pointing out that the vast majority of people in this country that I meet are very, very, very nervous about gender transitioning under the age of 18 for the following reason. Not because they believe that none of these kids will grow up to be trans, but they're concerned that some of them will regret it in later years and actually are too juvenile to make a decision. Now, I really understand. I think there is a balance there, and I understand that for some people that will feel overly draconian, but it is something that is part of humanity to protect young people from making life-changing decisions when they're under the age of 18. So I'm not necessarily sure that protection of young people from making a mistake constitutes constitutes discrimination.
It's not. I mean, so first of all, I mean, LGB Alliance are opposed to all kinds of trans rights, like pretty much across the board, every single trans rights we have in the UK today, and that includes things like protection from discrimination at work, from misogyny, for example, because the EHRC has proposed to change that and get rid of that for people like me, and LGB Alliance support that. But just on the trans healthcare thing for under 18s, I mean, this should be a decision made by experts and not by the government. Like, if you want to minimize the chance of regret and maximize the chance of well-being for every single kid involved, and that means stopping kids who aren't trans from transitioning and helping the ones who are, because we know the regret rate is incredibly low. But the point is, we want the experts making those decisions and not just some politician who's never met a trans kid.
Katie, we don't want... Katie, therein lies the problem. We don't want experts. We want the parents to make a decision.
Oh, yeah. And with the parents and the experts or the guardians.
But the other concern is that, look, there is no doubt now that there are people at the Tavistock Clinic who are going to be certainly civilly and maybe even criminally prosecuted for their behaviour. Now, I'm not saying that every single person who went to the Tavistock Clinic is a victim, but there are certainly some people who claim that they are victims, and I just worry about this. But Reem, look, you know, it is difficult, isn't it, for somebody like Katie, because on the one hand, you know, she's a taxpayer. She's got her job. She's doing what she wants. You only live once, and is presumably a well-rounded and reasonable person. But at the same,
well, we're all muddling through, Katie. Don't worry about that.
Exactly.
But at the same time, when somebody turns around who's a lesbian and says, "I do not feel that I should be pilloried for discriminating against somebody who has a penis," being in a
but that's fine.
Okay. So look, let's not get too graphic. But the point is, they're saying there is a danger associated. Give me a second, Katie. I just want to ask Reem. There is a concern about it, isn't there? And we don't want to discriminate against people. The balance is difficult, though.
I actually do sympathise with Katie's position. I do understand why she feels the way that she does. I do, however, think that when it comes to this particular story, the LGB Alliance are a charity that are able to argue for their ideas within a free society. Right. Now, if Mermaids are too upset that the LGB Alliance seems to be getting so much support from the LGB community, then they need to step up their own. But they clearly are, because the LGB Alliance exists. They have money. They have members that are members of the LGB community.
Katie, let me just ask you this: is there not a danger with all of this no platforming and shutting people up, that actually we lose the battle of ideas and just become a country where what the leaders say goes and nobody else gets to say anything at all?
Well, I mean, removing their charity status doesn't stop them from having a discussion or having their ideas or any of that kind of thing. And they get loads of funding, not from the LGBT community. I mean, they have said that they're anti-LGBT as a community, and they said every other single LGBT charity in the country was homophobic, which is delusional. But, like, yeah, I mean, they can say whatever they want. But the thing, I mean, I like taking on their arguments. I'll point out, like, their claims. Yeah. Like, they would say, for example, that any man who is attracted to me is a gay man, or gay men are attracted to me and straight men aren't. And just in the real world, in actual experience, living my life, that just isn't true. And that's like an idea they go around telling everyone and claiming is definitely true in all cases.
What about
and I can just say, well, that's definitely false. Yeah. And that's like a core part of their belief system.
Yeah, Katie, can I ask you this question, which is the bit that I struggle with? I think that there are... Well, I know that there are fair-minded trans people, but I also know that there are bad people out there. And when I look at situations which involve, say, somebody who just happens by pure coincidence to be a sex offender, desperately claiming to be trans when they go into prison in order to be transferred to a women's prison, I think to myself, I don't believe the sincerity of that person. I don't believe that that person is genuinely trans. And I think that a lot of the self-definition element of it is allowing people to exploit your community and by extension exploit the rest of us.
I think.
But I mean, like, in cases of, like, I mean, we've got to pick all these different examples as they come. But, like, for example, in the case of someone who's a sex offender and they request to be moved to a women's prisons, I mean, we already have a protocol right now where they do a safety check on any prisoner that requests to move prisons. And then they would just, if they're a sex offender, they don't move them. I mean, there was this one case which hit the national news because they put them in solitary confinement in a women's prison while they did the check, and then they decided to put them in the men's prison anyway. I mean, whether or not that person is trans, I don't see any reason to believe they aren't trans. I mean, but even if they aren't, like they still end up in a men's prison. I just don't think that's an issue.
Well,
and when we talk about self-ID, like people say self-ID, and when we were arguing for the Gender Recognition Act reform, that's to self-ID on your...
Katy, can I ask?
No, you can't. We are absolutely out of time. We've got 20 seconds.
You know what? It's an absolute pleasure to chat with you, Katy.
Thanks for having me.
No, would you come on again and chat with us more? Because I think we could do all night on this. Thank you.